Welcome to the Becoming Your Best Version podcast. I am your host, Maria Leonard Olsen. I'm a civil litigation attorney in Washington, D.C. I am also a podcaster, a journalist, author, TEDx speaker, and mentor to women in recovery. My most popular book is called 50 After 50, Reframing the Next Chapter of Your Life. And my TEDx talk is called Turning Life's Challenges into a Force for Good. I would appreciate reviews of both, and you can learn more and link to these things on my website, which is marialeonardolsen.com. I started this podcast 5 years ago because my work in the realm of women in midlife brought me into contact with amazing women who have inspired me and I think will inspire you. Today, joining us from Minnesota, although she lives all over Europe, is Amy Cerning Vasterling. She's a future-focused speaker, teacher, and intuitive who, through over 22 years of observational research, uncovered how a fixed pattern system rooted in narcissism suppresses human potential. Her work dismantles this structure, revealing a path to natural equality and genuine self-expression. Amy empowers individuals and communities to reconnect with their true nature and fully thrive. She leads monthly wisdom gatherings, which are a thought-provoking place to gain inspiration and explore life's possibilities through intuition and self-discovery. She also works with individuals and organizations. Her new book, No, Where the Status Quo Ends and You Come to Life, will be released September 25th. Read her Substack at The Future of Our Past, in which she offers powerful perspective of life from 250 years in the future, which highlights where this author sees the patterns leading us. All of this, including her social media and her website, is in the show notes. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
So you have chosen an interesting path in life. What brought you to this place?
Right? What am I thinking? Oh, I'm the youngest of five children, and I have very talented siblings, and they were quite a bit ahead of me. I'm much younger. And so looking at their lives, I wondered why they would reject opportunity to do certain things, opportunities that were unique and special. And not that they, were rejecting them maybe is a strong word, but they were just not leaning into the expression and expansion of fully who they were in my eyes. And I questioned it when I was young. And that led to asking, why don't all people thrive? And I hung with that for quite a few years while I was in my youth. But then it shifted when I was in my early or mid 20s, I'd say, to if one could, how would they collapse narcissism? And I focused on that instead. And it was more of an intuitive thing to switch to that versus something that was overt and saying, this person is this way or so on. And I see narcissism as we think of disordering, or a disorder, a personality disorder, but I think of it as being disordered, meaning there's something going on inside of our experience, and it could be from lineage, not just us, that is causing us to behave a certain way. And what we really need is parenting so that we come back to ourselves. So that's where the foundation of this started. And I am an intuitive, so I've experienced things that others don't and can't see. And a lot of that informed seeing into a deeper pattern of understanding what will come next, what will come next. And over those 22 years, now I can see where the pattern leads us. And it's very different, I feel. So that's, yeah, how.
Yeah, and you wrote a book that encompasses some of your work. Tell us more about the book.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of books in me, and I didn't know that until I finished this first one. But I kept saying to the editor I was working with, should I take that out and just make it into an article? And she said, sure. And so I'd stick it into a different document. And it turned out to be three other books are in me, that I have laid out quite nicely. But this first book is really a handhold on saying, I'm not telling you how to move out of this or collapse narcissism overtly. I'm giving you the understanding of how we got to this point and how we recognize it so that people feel understood is the main point of the book and feel comfortable thinking back to it as a source of support and with some information on this is how we can look at it so we can start to see it in our society. But my work is really like learning a new language and it takes repetition. So even somebody made the comment that you should read this book every 6 months so that you can get the repetition of what's going on there. But in my next book, which I'm working on, I will talk more in depth about some things that might challenge how we think about our world. And at first, I just wanted this opportunity to say, here's the way you are understood. I do see you. And I can articulate what a lot of people feel and think, but struggle to articulate for themselves. Yeah.
Mm, that is a talent.
Thanks. Yeah.
What does it mean that you offer a perspective of life now from 250 years in the future?
Yeah, about 15 years ago, I had that idea of I'm not a fiction writer. I mean, I wasn't even really a writer, but it came back around and I thought my work is challenging. One of the pieces that arrived probably also 15 years ago was everybody's lying to themselves, including me, and we can't see it. And that really tortured me to some degree. Like, what do I say? How do I say that? I can't just say to people, you're lying to yourself. So instead, this idea came to remove it from us so we could see the fruition of it and speak to it from very far away. And then that's what I started the future of our past, which is writing about these two characters, a grandmother and a granddaughter from 250 years in the future, and talking about the woman in this era that we now live in and what she saw and what she did and what distressed her, which I think is a common feeling for a lot of women. I mean, my work is really to help women restore beauty in their life of who they are, just see that for themselves at the core of it and trust that truth of who they are. Yeah.
What are some of the things that we lie to ourselves about?
Well, it's really hidden and overlaid so deeply that we don't see it. But in my work, I call it posturing in the model. So we are playing this role of almost a swinging pendulum where the power is in the middle and we have this more authoritarian on one side and the enabler on the other side. And my clients tend to fall into the enabler where we don't want somebody else to hurt because we have been in situations where we've been hurt a lot. And so that person is lying by protecting other people when actually that's not what the person needs. And often it happens with our children or our friends, our close primary relationships, where instead of just saying, I'm sorry you experienced that, is there a way that I can support you, or giving it over to them and letting them challenge or champion it, we tend to rush in and decide what other people need. And that often isn't a solve. It's really saying to them, I feel sorry for you. And so the person who's receiving feels this weight of, I feel I owe them because it's coming from something that isn't really a boundaried or a straight shooting way to communicate. So it feels a bit icky. That's a little example. I have bigger examples, but I'll keep it at that. Does that make
Yeah,
sense, Maria?
yeah, it
Okay,
does. It does. Thank you.
sure.
So I'm intrigued by your monthly wisdom gatherings. Can you give us a taste of what that looks like?
Absolutely. I started it because I wanted people to not feel so alone. One of the primary people that I attract are highly sensitive people, and they tend to be more introverted and highly heady, but they also are aware of a lot more in their world, and they always felt different. And there's a reason. I have another publication on Substack called Dear HSP, and it's letters to highly sensitive people to give them the understanding of why they are different and how that is completely a powerful thing. So in the wisdom gathering, we start out and I do an intuitive reading, but for about a half an hour. But the idea there is I'm asking for the energy of all the people of what they need to most hear. And then at about that 30-minute mark, I ask them, what did you hear? And people share different things that stuck out to them. And then I write some journal prompts. They go away for a 10-minute break while I do that. And then they come back and look at those questions and noodle them around or write if they want. And then they break into small groups and have a discussion to go deeper with that understanding. And really, the reason I started it was to level the playing field and help people see they aren't so different, that there are people that understand and see them and understand how they think. It also shows these highly intuitive people because again, that's who I tend to attract as well, that this is how intuition can work. So it gives them an example each time they attend. And then we break into or come into a big group at the end to hear what the groups came up with or what happened so that it neutralizes that playing field even further, saying, boy, there's a lot of synonymous, or the information is really overlapping. So it's kind of building this web at the end, and a nice way to reset for a monthly reset for people. I say it's like a reset for your little soul, come in.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow. Who couldn't use that?
I know. Right.
So I am also intrigued by people who consider themselves intuitive. I think we all are intuitive, but some people know how to nurture that within themselves, and most of us don't. So, how did you discover that you have this power of intuition, and how did you choose to use it in the way that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first recollection was when I was too young to actually remember something. And the reason I know it was clairvoyance, being able to see beyond, is I wouldn't have known what that space looked like because the way that it was when I was older was completely different. And so I knew at some point that helped me understand I am clairvoyant foremost. I can see and recall things that way. I think about it too. If I really had known it when I was in college, I probably could have solicited what answers were on the test if I honed that, right? I mean, that's kind of interesting. But then when I was 7 years old, I had a lot of trauma by the time I was 6. I was a bit tapped out, which was good because it's taught me the things I needed to learn. But let me tell you, it was not easy. And it was certainly lonely. But when I was 7, I had a very narcissistic first grade teacher, and she terrified me. So I would completely check out, which I know in psychology you'd say, oh, you're this, don't diagnose me. But what happened one of the times is she came up behind me and shook my shoulder, and I looked, and my peer across the way was on word 8 in a spelling test, and I didn't have a piece of paper or a pencil on my desk. Like, I was that checked out. But I recall looking beyond her across the room to the window, and I could sense that there was this male person floating out there, and he's a yogi, but I had no words for that. This was in the 1970s. And I was out there too in a small form of myself, I guess energetically, but I knew I felt safer out there than in the classroom. So I assume I knew some things that I couldn't articulate. Thank goodness I didn't articulate in my private Catholic school. She already hated me enough. They would have been like, get rid of her, send her to the psych ward. But then I would know things before people would say them, and they'd say, that's funny and uncanny. And when I was in my teens, it was stronger with friendships. I'd on a rotary phone dial my friend and then pick up because I'd thought about calling her, and I'd say hello, and she'd be there. Like, she already had dialed me and I picked up before it rang, right? So it's small. And then when I was in my 20s, I was standing with one of my professors of art, and I said, I wish, inside of my head, I said, I wish I could be in his brain and my brain at the same time to understand him. And after that, I started having premonitions and seeing silly things before they would occur, such as a book's going to fall off the table at a coffee shop. And 2 weeks later, it would happen. And my then husband would look at me and say, or, like, oh my gosh. And in my early 30s, I thought that that was, so I trusted it. But I really think, or so he trusted me and didn't think I was crazy, but it was really, I think, to see it through his eyes and remember it and trust it for myself. But when I was 27, I had a premonition after all these premonitions that I would die when I was 34. And I was terrified. And I still don't really know what that message means fully, but I'm way beyond 34. And it's a message, I think, about a spiritual death, and a rebirth
Yes.
of some sort.
Yeah.
And I think it harkens to a different time. It's something that I can tell felt different than this era. So I just, after that, I felt like there's no use in being reverent. And that's what I did, is I would shake my fist at the sky and say, if you want me to do this, then you bring me the foundational understanding, and I'm going to challenge everything that comes. And I think that is the beauty of my work, is I didn't accept it and I didn't listen to other people and say, protect yourself. I said, how about I don't protect myself and see what happens? And I learned a lot more from it. So
Mm.
I teach from, I think, more of an academic space within what we would understand as intuition. There's even a book that came my way called it's by, I'll have to maybe look it up, but um it was by a psychologist who wrote a book about intuition. And she, I can explain all of the things in her book, but she
Mhm.
was like, how does this work? Why is this true? If this is true, there's so much more, so, um, yeah.
Does your power of intuition sometimes scare people who are close to you?
No, I've been lucky that way. Even I remember driving past a family farm of my ex, and it hit my chest like a brick. And I said to him, "Your uncle's going to die in March." And he did, but it wasn't the uncle that I saw. But he could handle that because he was used to me. Like he was unflappable. And even in the family I grew up in, well, there was a lot there that wasn't healthy for who I am. They were okay with thinking in different ways. So
Mm.
it was acceptable. I didn't ever share this with them because that wouldn't have worked in the position that I was in the family. But I knew they were okay with this and this thinking. So I don't feel like it has scared people. And I'm also very mature in it. So I try and deliver things in a way. Well, I don't try. I do deliver things in a way that meet the individual so they understand how to uplift and how to move into what's true for them versus the scary, anything can be made scary, but
Mm.
that's not my work. Yeah.
Interesting. Because you have this gift, were you able to foresee that your marriage would end?
I think I fought that and I
Mm.
didn't want to know that that was true. So I can't say that I did. I don't know that I ever intuitively really accepted that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe, yeah, but mm, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, my marriage ended too, and I really didn't want it to. And I came from what we used to call, our society used to call a broken home, and
Mm.
I really fought it, but I was really unhappy, and I wish I could do it over again and exit the marriage in a different way than I did.
I'm sorry, Maria. That's really hard. I feel like my ex and I did exit the marriage really beautifully. And we even just this past March went on a week-long vacation with our two children. And
What?
we, stay in the same hotel room, all of us together. And so we really did set up an amicable divorce. It was mutual what I really said to the kids is we are limiting each other from being able to truly expand into who we are and express who we are. And that's not right. To
Mm.
teach them, you need to be aware of that for yourself too. And we need to be that example for you. Yeah.
Wow, that is beautiful. So you also have coined the term for much of your work as the model or resisting the model. What led you to use that term and the hierarchy and natural equality? You have these really powerful terms. Are these things that just came to you, or did you build on the work of one of your teachers?
No, I did this all inside of a box with myself. I didn't,
Great.
there were influences for sure, but just little tidbits. So it was while I was writing the book, after all of these years of looking at what is happening there,
Mhm.
that's where these words started to form. And I see it as, the hierarchy is really signaling to there are some who have no consequences, and those who have no consequences never fully mature, especially in this era emotionally. And yet, gone unchecked, they set the tone for society. And then we say that's just the way things are. That's the status quo. And so that's a troublesome piece. And if we have a non-hierarchical, which hierarchical society, things change and we become what we wanted, which is this narcissistic middle center of everything surrounds me is true, but it's that it's a fixed point. And in the future, we won't be the fixed point. We will be in motion with that in a different way. And so that's part of the hierarchy. But the model really came from be a model citizen, be a model mother, be a all of that. And the model to me is the how we scrap for a shred of control, or we use control to scrap for a shred of love or a place in the hierarchy. So it
Mm.
might be like, Maria, I won that award and you didn't. And it's me saying I'm better than you, that I'm higher in the hierarchy, right? That's proving or telling or boasting, or we posture in these different ways to try and, be better, when actually in the other side of it, when we're outside of the model, we know that I know I won that award and I'm happy. And when we feel that way, the other person tends to say, congratulations for winning that award. They're happy for us too. And that is knowing. So in the future, we'll be much more quiet. We'll have far less to say because we have nothing to prove. We know for ourselves and we hold that position, but we are in motion holding that position. So we're expanding.
Mm.
And then natural equality, I was floored. 2 years into writing the book, the editor said, it'll take 8 months. And I thought, okay, a year in, I said to her, we got to hop. Like, she said, this is really hard. We've got to slow down. It took almost 3 years, 33 months. And at 2 years in, when I was working on the book, I don't know, probably chapter 6 or 7, I clinched it and I realized the result of this is natural equality. And it's not what you'd think. It's not about being kind to people. It's free of emotion is what it is.
Mm.
And that's why all this movement of we have to heal ourselves and it really is about releasing ourselves from the trauma, and we'll emotionally heal, and we release our shadow by releasing the inner child that's all bent up and bent out of shape. That releases parts of our personality to work. I'm going to use a spiritual word, which I don't love, but in an aligned way.
Mhm.
And then we can move out of the model quite swiftly. And the process is like a birth. So we move in and out of the model, and
Mhm.
it's uncomfortable. And the worse it gets, like when you're birthing a baby, it gets really intense at the end.
Yeah.
We move forward and free of it. But my aim is to have as many people become an example of that, so that it just keeps falling away, where people say, that's what I want,
Mhm.
not wanting to be this fixed point of focus and the best, or these ways that we say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That would be a great gift to the world if that really rippled forward like that. So you do individual intuitive readings, and it sounds like from your material that you help people access their own intuition as opposed to just telling them what's happening.
Well, this is a really good point. I don't feel it's right to teach people to be intuitive. And the reason is it's that fixed point. It's the model. Instead, the only thing I feel we can do is help people trust their own intuition. And you're absolutely right. Everybody is intuitive. It's that some people have it more strong within them earlier or so on. And, but that's my only aim. And that's why I do the wisdom gathering, is people can come and see how it works for me,
Mhm.
and then it inspires that it's safe and it's okay for them to do it. And I'm not somebody who protects myself purposely, because then I've had all the experiences to become so powerful in it that nothing touches me. Right. And I've had like suicides hang on me for 2 weeks. I mean, I've had a lot of weird situations, but I always figured it out. And I let the discomfort be there, and, it was okay. So, yep, that's my position, is I don't really teach about it. Instead, I help people to understand themselves better. And some clients years ago would say to me, having a reading with you is like having 10 therapy sessions, but it's easy. That's
Oh.
amazing. But that's right. I am hitting it from a psychological place.
Mhm.
And my work, when I was first writing the book, I was in Dublin, Ireland, in the airport trying to charge my phone. And I started talking to this man, and he said, well, high level, what's your book? Give me the elevator pitch. And I was like, hey, I don't have any of that. No, no, no. And then I turned to him and I said, listen, this might be bold, but this is what my sense is that my work will change completely how we think about psychology over the course of 2 generations. And he was like, whoa. And then he gave me his email address, and it turns out he is a PhD psychologist at a university in the US. I thought, what are
Oh
the
my
chances of that?
gosh.
And he said, well, if nothing else happens on this trip, we met Amy. And I think that's really sweet. But that's my aim, is I want people to get it so that they can really thrive, really live their life, and stop the shenanigans of acquiescing and contorting. And yep.
That's beautiful. Wow,
Thank you.
wow, wow. What if you're intuiting something really horrible, like when you mentioned that someone was going to die? Do you feel compelled to share that with the person in front of you?
No, it's really simple. Actually, one time I did a reading and I said, show me a little more than I can handle. And I was reading for 5 people at once independently, but they were all listening. And this man, it taught me something, which is what the beauty of intuition and being able to do this is it taught me that we have the lifeline of some sort and there are opt-out points. And so I simply conveyed to that person the way to head to stay in the game. But I didn't say that. I just said I would really encourage you in a final synopsis to do this, what you've been thinking about, versus take a break and do nothing. Right. And then years later, I ran into somebody who was a part of that group and knows the person. And I was like, oh, how are they doing? Thinking, oh my God. And they're fine. I'm like, oh, did they do that project? They did.
Great.
So but we make that choice before we come, I think, of what the life is going to look like. And so those opt-out points, well, that isn't something we like when we're living our life. It's okay. Right. There's nothing I've ever seen that isn't okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you do a lot of deep, deep work. What do you personally do to become the best version of yourself?
Well, that's a great question. And the easiest answer is I let go. And that is sometimes very hard for me. I'm a, person who likes things a certain way. I have high expectations, I have high standards, but that's been a great opportunity to just let go, let go.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that mean to you to let go? Because it's something that we hear,
Mhm.
but people don't, I think, really know how to go about doing that.
Well, there was an artist that illustrated a character holding on to some handle, but they were floating. So they had nothing under them. And it said, let go of the handle. And it's exactly that simple is for me when I find myself moving too fast or getting, too wound up about something, I just am like, you got to let go. This will work its way out, and it always has, or, just that reassurance. But again, we can say like, I'm not fond of regulating and doing these things that psychologists would say, but more that what I just did there was parenting myself. Hey, kid, it's going to be okay. Right. And I don't need to speak to a specific part of myself, but it is this understanding that I don't have to control something or I don't have to make it happen.
Mhm.
And that's hard for who I am, right? Like I said, I have really high standards and I have high expectations of myself. So, and everybody, sorry, friends,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
and I think at a high level, and I quite honestly haven't had people that could challenge that in a way that was expanded me, but I don't think I was supposed to. It
Mm.
was doing it inside of a box by myself, right? Like a child, like figure that out, figure that out. So in truth, it is simply a tricky situation and saying, nope, I'm not going to get into that thinking or keep that rolling. But what I will say is, like in my marriage, when you say, what was your intuition with that? I couldn't let go. And that was my signal. Something is really wrong,
Mm.
right? That it's really not true for me and I'm lying to myself, right?
Wow. Wow, that is fascinating stuff. If you want to know more, go to amyvasterling.com and pick up her new book called No, Know, Where the Status Quo Ends and You Come to Life, which is going to be a great read. I know that.
Thanks, Maria. And thanks for having me. Also, just to clarify, it comes out on the 16th of September.
Okay, all right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.